it's a good day and it's a bad day. So I got this head all cleaned up. So, um, went in every nook and cranny with brushes, got everything cleaned out, got everything brake cleaned down, flushed out, and then protected with WD-40 for now. Also scrubbed the valve seats, really good. Gave them a good inspection. There's a little bit of pitting, and you can kind of see it. This thing isn't new, but I'm not looking for perfection. The thing about a small black Chevy is they don't really go bad right away. They just slowly run until they burn so much oil that you just want to rebuild it. They don't generally fail. And these are the valve seats that were designed for the leaded fuel. So I'm sure running unleaded fuel is great for it. But here's where we talk about the mistake, which is why it's a bad day. So this stuff I had, so I told you before I have that oil eater stuff for the parts cleaner. So I still wasn't happy with the amount of carbon that were on the valves. So I let them sit in this, which I filled full of oil eater, for the last 2.5 days. So that in itself is not a problem. They did a great job. I went through this morning, cleaned up the seating surfaces. The stem's really good. Some of the baked on carbon I'm not going to really go after because it's kind of like cleaning the bottom of your shoe. Get the majority of it, but if you start making that thing look perfect, you're never going to walk again. So all this stuff is not in any of the seating surfaces. The seating surfaces are clean. They all look good. They're ready to go back in. Springs are fine. The caps are fine. The keepers, I'm going to go ahead and end up replacing because of this mistake. So this is your valve spring retainer. And you can wonder why it looks so pitted. Well, that's because it turns out when you leave this particular part, I don't exactly sure know what it's made of, something sciencey. But when you leave this for 2.5 days, and I should have seen it when I pulled the heads out before because I let them soak, and there was a little bit of pitting, but I didn't really think anything of it until it looks this bad now. So at first glance, you might be like, well, that doesn't matter. It's going to be submerged in oil. Well, the problem is the inside part of this is the seating surface for that oil seal. So that now went from completely smooth to extraordinarily rough. So as soon as you drag that rubber seal on it, that's not going to last very long. So I did that for this whole side. But the rocker arms are good, but I went ahead and called Summit this morning because these are the 461 Chevy double hump Fuelie heads. They don't, obviously, they make a lot of reproduction stuff and replacements for it that have bigger valves, but even Summit doesn't list this stuff as you got to call them basically. So I called him, spoke to a very nice gentleman on the phone, about 10 minutes. I got a set of these coming that are supposed to fit and a set of these coming because keepers are one of those very cheap parts that can go bad, and if they go bad, everything lets go. So like I said, I'm trying to minimize any type of things that I have to replace. This is just a bonehead move on my part that's going to cost me $110 and a little bit of originality. But I went ahead a couple days ago, pulled out the battery tray and these go into the factory manifolds because your spark plugs run. The spark plug wires run from the back of the engine down underneath and come up to the spark plugs instead of up and down, which I always thought was pretty cool. And these are the brackets for them. So this is after 2 days in the part soaker and scrub. They're still drying a little bit, but I've got this, it's called Evapo Rust. I used it on some bolts the other day. I heard a few things about it, so I figured I'd give it a try. And I don't know whatever science crap is in the jug, but it seemed to work. So I'm gonna see what it does with these. This will be a good test for it. This guy's fine, but I don't want him to be lonely while everyone else is in here getting baked. So we're gonna fill this thing up with Evapo Rust and then see after a day or two what it looks like. Now, I may not have enough to fill it up to the top of this tray, which will be good because I can get a direct, before and after, and then we'll see what that looks like. Well, yeah, not even close. I should have bought 2 of those. So it came up a little bit on the battery tray and kept most of those brackets under the Evapo Rust. So this should be a really interesting, you can see what color it's starting off with. This stuff is It's supposed to be reusable basically forever. You just pour it through a filter and then pour it right back in the jug and just continue to use it. So we'll see what this looks like after a day or two. So it's been maybe a few hours. So we'll see what it's already done. Not a dramatic yet, but you can kind of see how it's changed. So we'll see. I'm not expecting bare metal, obviously, but see what it does after the next day or so. That gives you a pretty good idea on this thin stuff. It's really eating that stuff away. So while I'm waiting for the new valve retainers to come in, I'll go ahead and disassemble the driver's side head the correct way. Get it all cleaned up, prepped. Debating on whether I'm going to go ahead and paint everything before I install everything, or if I'm going to install everything and then paint. But yeah, you can see these valve retainers look great. These are the ones that I basically cooked. You can see all the sludge and everything. This is after pressure washing and scouring several years ago. You can see the difference. Of course, this one just doesn't have any paint on it anymore. So disassembling the driver's side head. So definitely a good idea. If I had put all this back together without it, this valve seal is completely gone. So that would have been great. That means it was likely doing it before. But then here's another one to be careful of, especially when you're putting the heads back together and you're not getting any machine work done. You can see as it pops up right there. I'll get a brass file here. Let's see if I can zoom in. Uh-oh. Tech support. Hang on. So this guy right here. So that came from when the puller, or the clamp that I got isn't, kind of wobbles around, which is not great. But this piece, these valves are pretty much an interference fit for this guide, which is, I believe, brass. I have to look. But if you try to withdraw this valve out, you feel that resistance. That's gonna scrape that whole thing down there. So what I'm gonna do, this is not a part of the valve that I have to worry about as far as the seating surface. It doesn't go all the way down. I'm gonna just take a real small file and some emery cloth, smooth that guy out so that I can withdraw it out without damaging it. But that's an easy mistake to make. All right, so just a little bit of emery cloth on there. You can still see the defect, but basically the rule of thumb is if you can't catch your fingernail on it, you're probably good. And then of course, when you push it through, no resistance. So easy day. So disassembly is complete. So you can see how much carbon is still on those valves and the seating surfaces. So this time what I'm going to do is I'm still going to soak the valves, but I'm not going to soak the retainers, caps, or even the valves springs themselves. Retainers are getting replaced because I got that set coming that's going to cover both sides. These are going to get replaced, and then I've got new ones of these. But you can see this thing's about to go in the tank for 2 days, so I can scrub all the carbon out of that. Really get after those valve seats. And so just like I had to return a tap set to Harbor de Freights, I'm not a fan of this valve compressor. So at first glance it looks fine, but it kind of works on a principle of you have to have this piece locked in, because if you don't, as you tighten it, this thing will just move back like that. So they want you to lock it in all the way to keep it from moving back, which is great. When you have this much slop in there and you're trying to tighten on those valve caps, you can see like even right now it's not even lined up. And as you tighten it, it goes off. So it was okay to get the valves off, but when I put it back on, in order to get the valve seal back on, I have to essentially compress the whole thing below, slide the valve seal, then bring it back up, put the keepers in, and we'll let it go. This is not going to cut it. So that $80 piece of riveted garbage is going back to the store.